Welcome to the final Football Tragics podcast of 2022-23 season. Tony's here, Morty's here, I'm here. Well, lads, it's all over. There's a lot to unpack. Morty, your boys finishing wherever they finish. Mine finishing the worst a lot. And Tony, you getting Champions League football. But look, we're going to just run through all the games. They all start at the same time this week. So I'm just going off whatever Google said was the first. So it's Aston Villa 2, Brighton 1. Securing that Conference League spot over Spurs, Villa did. Tony, talk to me about this one. Massively impressive season for Villa.
Yeah, impressive season. I think for Villa, okay, you're going to the Conference League, but this now adds another challenge to next year. Obviously, if it was a United, a Chelsea, or a Liverpool in a situation, we'd probably go in. I'd rather have no Europe than play in the Conference League because you're adding extra fixtures into a team that's trying to rebuild. But for Villa, it's a massive achievement, massive win. We've seen Brighton tear apart Chelsea, tear apart United, tear apart Liverpool this year. So they're a great team. Villa's on the rise, and I think I read a stat after this game that if the season started when United came into this team, I think they're only 2 points behind City, so they would have been the closest chasing team. So massive end to the season for Villa, but for Brighton, so be it. Move on to next year, but exciting times ahead for both.
Well, I mean, Brighton, if not had a better season, they finished in sixth. They got Europa League football for next year. So, I mean, that's huge for them. But obviously Villa on them, Emery at the helm. Like you said, Tony, they've had an incredible season since he came in. And I think for a lot of teams, getting that Conference League spot or Europa League or whatever you want to get, it's happened to, the likes of Leicester and stuff. Sometimes it can be a hindrance the next season, but they've got a manager in Unai who has won European competitions before. So he kind of knows how to work with a squad and rotate. And if they back him and get some more numbers in, they'll be able to cope with that. Brighton as well, I think, will be decent there. You've seen the likes of West Ham on a cup run now with the cup final to play, European Cup final. So it's massive for these teams. I mean, Villa have got 2 Champions Leagues before many years ago, so they know what they're doing. But it's huge for clubs that I suppose are overachieving, so to speak. Morty, what are your thoughts? Obviously, Steven Gerrard got the sack early in the year, so is it just crazy to see how good they've been since?
It has been, considering that they did the same thing when Gerrard came in initially. It's just the fact that Emery kept it up and pushed that team to another level that none of us actually thought they had in them. It'll be interesting for them because obviously that Grealish money has been put into that team. I don't know what the next step for them is now. How much they reinvest in knowing that they've got more European Cup now as well, because at the moment they were just playing week in, week out, battling, everyone else struggling, that they were just hitting the right gears at the right time. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Brighton, on the other hand, they've done it somehow. 2 years ago, we thought they were going down, and here they are now, and they're about to get ripped apart. So it's just about whether they can hold on, and I don't know. Yeah, it'd be tough times ahead for them, I think, considering.
Yeah, well, you say they're going to get ripped apart. Obviously, McAllister looking like he's going to go to Liverpool. Casado, is he going to Arsenal? Where is he going? Fabrizio Romano has said both of them are going to leave. Tony, what does that mean for a team like Brighton? They've just gotten Europa League football. Neither is these two players. One's a World Cup winner, yes, but neither of these two players have played European football yet. So should they be leaving? Should they be leaving first so soon, I should say? Or should they be giving another year at Brighton and kind of taking them higher?
I mean, you just got to look at Leicester. Vardy, Mahrez, they both had the option to leave. One of them stayed, one of them left, and one of them's going down to the Championship, and one's sitting on a team that wins titles for fun. So, yes, okay, they could have stayed there for another year. They could have had a crack, but I think, like we said, with Brighton, they just have to keep pushing, and obviously, in the end, if they sign world-class players, they do, but I think they're going to be fine. I think they'll get the funds from finishing where they finish. I'll get the funds from, I guess, did they go for qualifying Brighton, or are they automatically in the Europa League, Aaron?
I'm not sure how it works. Google has them as just Europa League group stage, so I don't know exactly, but I thought it was the case of one goes through qualifying, one goes straight in, but maybe England has more coefficient points in UEFA these days to just get straight to. I'm not sure.
Oh, well, like I said, fair play to Brighton. I think they'll strengthen where they need to strengthen. They'll get a decent back from McAllister. Liverpool love paying overs if they do go there. So they'll get that price and they'll spend that wisely, as we've seen. You can't look at me. How much did you pay for Darwin Núñez? And he's been an absolute flop all year, so you love paying overs.
I think go get his stats up.
To finish on these two teams, because we'll have to get to Liverpool a bit later. Morty, do these two teams finish same spots next year? Do they do better? Do they win any cups? Or is it just a case of a Leicester and they kind of had that glory run? And obviously Leicester have won the bloody Premier League, but do they now just start to trickle out because it gets too much for them? Early prediction.
It just depends on how they go about replacing the players that they're going to end up losing, because there's the players will leave. There's nothing you can hold against them in saying that. But I think in past, they've lost players and then they've reinvested, kind of Spurs-like, and gone, okay, well, I can get five players and replace this one, and 1, 2, 3 can work out. At least they try that. But whether that works now with the fact that they've got Europe too, where they've got to get a team gelling and have the depth to run through the two competitions, I think that's why they might struggle. But I don't know. They've proved us wrong for the last 3 years, so I can't knock them. And who knows? Potter might be back there. So.
Jeez. All right, moving on. Everton 1-0 over Bournemouth keeps them in the Premier League for yet another season. 2 final day pitch invasions. Morty, we'll start with you just because of the Liverpool Everton rivalry there. Obviously, you would like to see them down, but for Everton, this is 2 years in a row now they've been battling relegation and only just survived on the final day or a couple weeks prior. Where do they go from here? Yes, it's bloody brilliant to see for them. They've never been relegated out of the Premier League, but can they go back on the up next year, or are they literally scraping by and they are destined for relegation at some point?
I don't understand this club currently, because the fact that they're invading the pitch, ready to just celebrate like the world's come home, I get it. I understand that staying in the Premier League is great for these small clubs, but you're Everton. You shouldn't be there in the first place. Like the fact that they were there last year and then they continued on. I understand that they've got no money, that they've got nothing on that, but it just doesn't seem like anything's changed at the club. They've got managers in, managers out. I mean, they got Dutch ball happening. It doesn't work. So I don't know where they go next, to be honest. I really don't. And the fact that they've celebrated this so much, it's just well, if they're happy with that, we'll just do this again next year. It just seems like that's what they're going for now, because they didn't. It's not even like they had some success and they've had injuries and they just fell apart. They've just been crap all season long. It's just been a continual thing all season.
Well, they have had a number of injuries throughout, but I don't think they've been really 5-6 players out at the time. They should definitely be able to string a few results together here and there.
Yeah.
Tony, I'll ask you, I suppose, the same question on Everton firstly.
It's a tough one. I think, doing a pitch invasion at the end of the year, cool. At the end of the game, cool, go for it. You survived. You know how big it is to a side like Everton. Like we said, they shouldn't be that low down the ladder, but they are. So the emotions are going to run high. For them, it's almost like you've won the final on the final day. You've lifted the cup because you're staying in the Premier League for another year. And we've seen the likes of Sunderland, they've gone down again. So for them to stay up, it is a good, movement at the moment. But I also think they're on the same downward spiral at Southampton, where we sat here year after year saying Southampton, they just survive. Next year they'll get better. But we've seen this year, they got to that point where it was too far. And I think Everton, if they don't bring in the right manager, the right players, they'll be down in the next couple of years.
Interesting note. All right, now on Bournemouth, suffered a 1-0 defeat here. They've actually lost their last 4 in a row, and yet we're still safe weeks ago. I mean, I had them going down. I'm not sure. I can't remember where you boys had them, but are they a surprise package for the season? I mean, you look at they finished 15th. Maybe that doesn't scream surprise to you, but a lot of people had them going straight back down, probably one of the teams finishing bottom. So a successful season, albeit not the greatest finish in the Premier League, right? Tony, I'll start with you for this one.
Yeah, I mean, obviously everyone expected them to go down and, you know what? If you can survive being a club like Bournemouth, yes, you haven't had the best finishing. Yes, you conceded 71 goals and only scored 37. But for a team that's trying to stay in the league, and we've seen the Fulhams, we've seen the Norwiches in years past go up, down, up, down, up, down, to stay in the Premier League for your second year, that's a success. Doesn't matter if you finish 17th by 1 point or if you finish second. Like, you stayed in the Premier League, you're there for another year, you build on that. So good signs for them. Good banter from their TikTok. They put up something with, I think it was every single presenter that said they were going down, and then it was them celebrating a goal to stay up. So fair play to them, but I think they also benefit from the likes of, like we've mentioned, Southampton, Leeds, Leicester, Everton, and Forest having such a poor season, because come next year, if that, where is it, Leicester wins 2 more games, Bournemouth kind of slip into that relegation fight again. So I know they can't next year being relegated, but in those points, 34 to 39 is not enough to be safe next year, I don't reckon.
Yeah, well, you speak on those points. I mean, the magic number was 40, and I feel like we've seen each year it get lower and lower. Southampton finished on 25. They were obviously relegated a while ago, but Leicester relegated on 34. It just shows that that number is getting lower and lower. Morty, do you fancy Bournemouth to be able to do it again next year? Or, I mean, 39 points it's not going to be enough next year. Like, do you think it's going to go up again, or is it just, what is it?
I think the main issue with the points is the fact that City just take too much away from everyone else, pretty much. That's the honest truth about it. But I don't see them. They're probably going to end up in the same spot again next year. Like, I think there'll be other clubs that have got some bigger issues upstairs. I think Bournemouth still have some money. They'll be able to just sign your players that just hold spot in the Premier League. They're not going to do anything exciting. They won't go on any mad run, but they've got enough in them to just scrap your draws, get your wins, pull off one upset, and then they'll just magically end up with enough points. They'll be there or thereabouts all season, but I think they'll probably be at the same spot again. They just don't look like they haven't reinvested since they just gave Liverpool all that money for no reason. They haven't spent anywhere near as much, and they haven't done anything since. And I think they're just content with where they are. So,
all right, let's get into 2 teams who had bad seasons, I would say. Leeds obviously being relegated the worst, but Tottenham as well. They finished in 8th outside that European football now. They got jumped by Villa. So a bad season in both regards for both teams. But Leeds will start with Tony. Obviously, you're smiling. You're bloody over the moon to see Leeds finally go down. Probably could have done it a couple of years ago, right when they came back up. So talk to me about Leeds. Can you see them being a team that comes straight back up, or are they going to face the Sunderland factor and go straight back down again?
Well, I don't think they're going to go as bad as Sunderland did when they went to double relegation, but I do think Leeds are a team that could find themselves in a mid-table scrap. They came into the Prem, they hit the ground running in their first season. Everyone went, wow, if this is their first season, I can't wait to see what they do the following season. They're going to push for Europe, and they crumbled. Now, disappointed, McTominay's not going to score his 4 goals a year that he scores against Leeds, but I think from a United perspective, you do lose, and take nothing away from the likes of Chelsea, Liverpool, City, you do lose what feels like one of the original derbies that we have with Leeds. So you do lose that mentality, you lose that stadium. But let's be honest, they weren't good enough. They almost did enough to stay up. But on the course of a whole season, Leeds deserve to go down. And I look at the teams around them and I think, okay, Southampton, yes, they were relegated first, but if you look at the results they got, they probably deserve to stay up more than what Leeds did. You look at Leicester, the results they pulled against the Big Six, they probably deserve to stay up. So I don't think they'll get relegated again, but I think they'll struggle to get above mid-table.
Yeah. And Morty, on Spurs then, obviously I said it was a poor season for them. Harry Kane, you've obviously been vocal about him. 30 goals and not getting the golden boot. Like, he carried Spurs this season, and it just unfortunately wasn't enough for his sake.
pretty much, yes, but it shows that you can't be a one-man team. And I think, by no fault of Kane, I think the rest of the team's been pretty lackluster. I mean, Son, I know, old mate Richarlison, I think he's probably down as one of the biggest flops of the season. And they just haven't seemed to think that they don't look like a team. They haven't looked like a team since Poch. They've just looked like a bunch of, good players that are playing some football. but they just I don't know what it is. Like I sit here, I love to hate on them. It's hilarious, but it doesn't make sense why they keep doing what they do. It's just the inevitable Spursy effect. But I don't know. I don't know what that. But they've tried everything now. They're going to end up going back to what they know. And I mean, I feel sorry for Kane and the fact that if he signs his contract for next, is he still signed for next season or has he got one?
Yeah, he's got one more year left, I think, because he signed the extension, didn't he, when City were after him?
Yeah. It doesn't. He's going to go down as most. Well, I can't say lucky because he keeps signing the contracts, but one of the best to never win anything because it doesn't look like they get any better. They've spent their money. Son's got to get back in form, but even with them firing, they didn't do anything last season. So, yeah, it's a tough watch.
Obviously Harry Kane will, whether it happens next season, I don't think so, not quite, but he'll get that all-time leading scorer record for the Premier League. He wants that, but whether that happens at Spurs, I don't know. I just think the only club that's really going to go in for him is United. Obviously, they've wanted him for a while now, and the interest seems to be cooled now, but I think it's just always going to be there. Tony, I'm sure you would like to have him there. He's a goal getter. It's what you guys need. But can you see him staying at Spurs? And should he stay at Spurs?
It's a tough one because if Harry Kane was to, let's be completely honest, if Harry Kane was to go win an FA Cup in a Spurs jersey, he becomes a legend of the club. If he goes and wins a Premier League at, say, a United, a Chelsea, or a Liverpool, it's the same arguments you get from the Van Persie thing. You had to go somewhere to win the title. So personally, if I'm Kane, I'm going, you know what? Look at my season. I've scored 30 goals and the team hasn't backed me. The manager hasn't backed me enough. Even the owner hasn't backed me enough to go and sign these players to make me not win the Golden Boot, because I don't think Kane cares about the Golden Boot, but I haven't been backed enough to go and win a league, to go and compete for a top four. So the other side, Levy's an absolute cut. So I don't think he's going to let him go. He's not going to let him go. He's going to let him run his contract out. I don't really think he cares if they get 100 million or if they get zero in a year's time. I reckon he'll run the contract out. But again, he's only 30 by the time his contract runs out. So if he was to go to a United for free, you probably still get 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 years for a player how he plays. So I think he stays at Tottenham. I think it ends quite badly, but I mean, unlucky to him because he's going to be known as the man to score 30 goals and not win the Golden Boot. So,
yeah, well, you're right. I think he does stay at Spurs. The loyalty is a thing, but it could end up pretty sour, and then he could just go and win the Prem with United or whoever, and it kind of tarnishes Spurs' legacy. But at the end of the day, you're right. They haven't backed him. He's done enough, and he's consistently been doing enough. I think last year was probably one of his poorer years, but even then still scored, I think, 18, 17 goals or something, which isn't too bad, and got a lot of assists. So Son's been off this year, came good here and there, but they just really don't have a team that can put it together. They go on a couple of decent runs and you think, oh, this team's back. But Ryan Mason at the helm right now, I can't see that being a permanent thing. And if it does, they're not going upwards on the ladder, that's for sure. So we'll see what Spurs do next year. See you later to Leeds. We'll see you whenever. Who knows? But now we'll get into the only team that did the double over Manchester City this season, Brentford. 2-1 in the first game, 1-0 in the second. Impressive season for Brentford. Couldn't quite get European football, but finishing ninth, top half. Again, a bit like Sheffield United, where Sheffield United obviously had that impressive season, couldn't maintain it the following. Brentford had done it. They're staying in the Prem for another year, Tony. What are your thoughts on that?
It's massive when you think they've gone through the whole year with obviously Ivan Toney. Now, obviously, we know what charges he's been found guilty of, but they've gone for a whole season where the writing's on the wall. When's he going to get suspended? When's it going to happen? To then turn around and lose him, what was it, last week, and still come out and beat the champions when, let's be honest, it doesn't matter if City win this game, but they would have wanted to win it. They would have wanted to celebrate the title with a win. They come out with no out there striker and they get the result done. So they are a tricky team. They obviously started United season in the worst possible way at the start of the year. So we've been there. We've seen what they can do to a big team, and they've done the double against City. They finished in the 9th position. So I think next year, if they keep spending and the way they spend is almost like a money ball situation. If they keep spending, I don't think Conference League's out of reach next season.
Absolutely. I think they're on an upwards trajectory, that's for sure. And Ivan Toney will miss 8 months. It's a long time, but he's not going anywhere else. That pretty much means that he's safe at Brentford for another year. Well, obviously,
Do you reckon he
they
got to be over 7.5 months suspension?
Well, they're obviously they're going to miss him next year. They're going to have to recruit because I don't think Umbueno can do it all on his own. They're going to have to get another striker in, but who knows what impact Tony can have when he gets back. As I said, he misses 8 months. I assume that 8 months is 8 playable months, not just from now, because there's 3 months until the start of the season. So he's done all right if he's just missing the off season. But I assume it's matches or whatever. But he'll be there for the end of next season, and then who knows? Does he go off then? I don't know. But Brentford, yeah, they're on the up. That's for sure. It's good to see because, like you said, they play this money ball style. They've got going on there. And it's working. It's working for them, and it's good to see. Morty now, City they've not won in the past 2 games. They didn't ever since wrapping up the title. They beat Chelsea, hungover, and then they've just kind of taken their foot off the pedal. I wouldn't say it's an anticlimactic finish to a Premier League season, but they did their job and just kind of moved on with it. What do you reckon?
It's just another tick box exercise for Pep at this point with City. It's pretty much what everyone expected. Let's be real. There's nothing if was about it. I think the fact that only finished with there's no 9 in front of that points, no 90 plus points again. That's a bit shocking considering the strikers numbers that he's just put up. So, yeah, I mean, we all sit here and say what's next for him, but they probably will go and win the Champions League. And what is it next week? Week after?
Week after, I think.
Yeah, let's be real. They probably will do it then. Yes, I know we don't want them to, but there's not much more to say about them. They've completed football. So,
well, Tony, obviously, you guys have in the FA Cup final. That's next week, and I think you can stop them in that regard of trouble. Your rival team, Inter, can also stop them in the Champions League. Just quickly on that one, who are you cheering for, City or Inter?
Man, I'm pulling out my old Inter Lions kit. I'm wearing black and blue that morning because I want them to do a job over City.
All right, let's get into your actual team then. United, 2-1 over Fulham to finish the day. End up finishing in 3rd spot. Good season under Ten Hag. Good first season. 1 trophy, could be 2 still, and a top 3 finish.
Yeah, I think it's very successful, and I think I don't think Ten Hag, because of how the season's played out, gets enough credit. Now, yes, Arsenal were flying, massive props to Arteta, but if you look at United last year, United this year, it's a 17-point swing. So he's got 17 more points than last season after losing Ronaldo, bringing in Weghorst because he wasn't backed for a striker, and he still somehow got top 3 with a striker who didn't score a Premier League goal since January. So I think he's come in, he's done the job. Like you said, if you would have told a United fan you would have got top 4 or a trophy, regardless of what it was at the start of the year, we take that with open hands. So to have won 1 trophy, to have been in an FA Cup final coming up next weekend, and to be 3rd, I think that's a massive accomplishment. And I'm not saying I'm not going to be one of those fans that goes, oh, we're going to win the league next year, because I still think, not just us, I think the whole league's probably about 20 points behind City in a term of how they're playing. But I think the trajectory of we're going to be in the Champions League, we're going to give it a crack next year, we're going to give these cup runs a crack now, we're going to sign a striker, fingers crossed we're going to sign a striker when we fuck off Weghorst. But I just think they're starting to buy into Ten Hag's. And yes, we had the season where this year we lost to Liverpool 7-0. We lost to City 6-3 or whatever it was. We've lost to Arsenal 3-2 at the Emirates, all these things, but we were still able to turn around. And each time it was, okay, we've lost, but I have faith that we're moving forward under this manager. And I probably haven't had that for the last 2 or 3 managers, if I'm being completely honest.
Good point. Morty, United, good season for them from the outer, would you say?
It is. I mean, they're starting to look like a team week in, week out. There's no one really, there's no shining light of Ronaldo there weighing down Pogba before that. So, I mean, it's just another competitive team that I think it's better for the Premier League when there is more competition, because you can see City haven't not won the title, but that's 10 points less than they've got previously. Like they're pulling some of it back. Like some of the results, yes, haven't gone United's way, but everyone's just pulling back some points that they probably would have just given up at this point of the season, and it's better for the league because yes, it has been pretty pretty basic. City winning. Quickly
on Fulham, good season for them. Top half finish, 10th spot, right smack bang in the middle. And can they build like a Brentford? I suppose. Obviously, Fulham have been in the Premier League more times, but they've been a bit of a yo-yo club recently. So good finish for them. Hopefully, they can build forwards. Tony.
Yeah, great season from Fulham. I think we all had them there or thereabouts to go down. I did have them just surviving, but to finish in that 10th position, I think some massive ups from Fulham. And you know what? You can call it a fluke, but I like to say they've learned from their mistakes. They didn't just go out there and buy all these players to say, look, we've got all this money. Let's buy A, B, C, D, E, like a Nottingham Forest. They went out and said, we need this position. Let's sign them. We need that position. Let's sign them. Again, Mitrovic, absolutely unbelievable season. I think he's definitely slept on when you look at the people above him that score goals. But Mitrovic had a cracking season. Fulham had a cracking season. And if you're a fan of Fulham, who we do joke that you go for every now and again when Chelsea copped a loss, I think you're definitely proud of how they played, and you're looking forward to hopefully, I'm not going to say a very long stay, but at least the next 3 or 4 years you'll be able to stay and solidify yourself in the Premier League.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's move on to the next game, and one that I don't want to even speak about for too long. Chelsea 1-0 with Newcastle. Finally, Chelsea's season is over. Kick my feet up for the next 3 months and just sit back and watch what happens. Poch will come in. We'll spend another $500 million and we'll see what happens next year. But look, all in all, it's been an absolutely dreadful season. 12th spot. Finished with our lowest ever points tally in the Premier League. And I, like any other Chelsea fan, just am over the moon to see the season be wrapped up now. Finished on home soil. Mason Mount not getting any, obviously being injured, but looked as though he's walked around the pitch for the final time as a Chelsea player, which is, I mean, that's heartbreaking. I don't want to see him leave, but it might be, well, yeah, Tony, it could be your gain, I suppose. It looks like it's run its course, unfortunately. But we'll see what happens. There's going to be a lot of players moving on, getting kicked out of the club, basically. There's going to be a lot of signings coming in, that's for sure. But yeah, Chelsea, obviously disaster. Newcastle, however, Champions League football is on the horizon now. Fantastic. Tony, I'll let you start with if you want to go with Chelsea or if you want to go with Newcastle. How did you see? Obviously, we're not really speaking about the games itself in this final round. We're kind of just going off their seasons in general.
Newcastle, massive season. They secured top 4. It looked a bit shaky towards the back end, and we sat there going, Liverpool's going to chase down United and we're going to chase down Newcastle, and one of them's going to drop out. But to see them survive after the heartache of losing the cup final to Manchester United, I think that's a massive shout out to their coach. Obviously, he's come in. Everyone said, oh, why didn't they go sign this superstar coach and all these superstar players? But they got Eddie in. He knew what he was doing. He got them all around the boys, and they started playing some really entertaining football. So Champions League, it's another big jump for Newcastle. Obviously, they could go out there. They could get drawn into a group with, let's be completely honest, a group of death. They could get smashed. They could end up in the Europa League, and we sit here and go, maybe they weren't ready for it, and that could hurt next year's season. But from every Newcastle fan I know and from everyone I've spoken to, they weren't expecting Champions League football for the next 3 or 4 years. So to get it in, I guess, a year and a half after getting taken over, absolutely brilliant. But also, let's look at Chelsea, and I guess they're kind of contrasting. Chelsea spent a shit ton of money. Newcastle did spend in relative a shit ton of money to what they're used to. One got it right. One just went out and said, that's a nice shiny car. Let's sign him. That's a nice shiny player. Let's sign him. And there was no camaraderie on the pitch. It was Chelsea kick a ball around. Something didn't happen. I'm going to yell at him. I'm going to yell at him. Now, do I think Chelsea bounce back? Yes. Do I think it happens next year? Probably not. I think they're still sitting in that 6th to 9th position. But I think what does help them is no Europe. They've got the youngsters that can get into those cup games that we know are good enough to compete in those cup games. So they can really, as they say, focus on the league and let's make what was a fucking hilarious, dismal season, but hilarious from everyone else. Let's hope that's done. And yeah, let's move on from that.
Morty, Poch is coming in. That's pretty much all but confirmed. will he get this Chelsea team back to where they belong? He certainly overachieved with the Spurs team. Did he underperform with a PSG team? Possibly. A lot of egos there. Will he be able to manage the egos at Chelsea and get them back to fighting for titles?
I think it just goes down to how much control they give him at the club, because you're right. I think when there was too many egos, I think he did falter a bit. But then you look at what he did at Tottenham and you go, well, he didn't put all the weight on Kane's shoulders, but he did right by Kane and had faith in that one man, and they had, players you hear all the in out that he could rely on. And I think that kind of got lost. So if they do it at Chelsea, fair enough. But I think there is some clear out to had. I think you've already got players coming in and whoever it may be. But I think Poch is going to need to find his new Harry Kane. Not going to be the next regen, but just that one player that will be.
What about Harry Kane? Does he somehow lure him over to Chelsea?
Well, that's what we get on to Newcastle. I think Harry Kane is the perfect fit for Newcastle, because we talked about him going to another club to win a title and be given the Van Persie treatment of having to leave. If he goes to Newcastle and does get the FA Cup or keeps him in the top four, that's, to Newcastle fans, that's it. He's done their job for him. He's not going to the club that's won it before or done anything like that. Yes, I understand they won it before, but I think it's a perfect fit for him at that age. He won't have to demand every minute of every game, but he will demand enough to get his record. What better way to replace Shearer than with the next Newcastle striker? So who knows? Who knows what to see? But I think the only problem with Newcastle is that they've got Champions League football now, and they can't let it distract from the fact that they've done right by their transfers so far. If they go on down the fact that just because Champions League's now, they're going to attract a lot of other players that do require that, shining light and brand new shiny cars and that sort of stuff, that they don't just end up falling apart with that sort of transfer logic.
Yeah, they've definitely got it right to this point. With Eddie Howe, Tony, you said it, Morty, you've said it. But now that attraction of Champions League football is there's going to be a lot of agents offering their star players to Newcastle. So it's a matter of, can Eddie Howe find the best ones, the ones that will fit his team, and the owners just don't go, oh, I like that. I think they do trust Eddie Howe's opinion, though. They do very much do the opposite of what Todd Bowley does and just spend a lot of money. They really think about what signings will help the team. So with the attraction of Champions League football, I hope that continues for their sake, and they still continue to build a team, just a stronger team. So we'll see how that plays out. Let's move forward to a team that they won in the final day. They did their part. Unfortunately, Everton did theirs as well. Leicester going down. So from 7 years ago, winning the Premier League, to being in the Championship next season, Tony, what do you make of Leicester? Where's it all gone wrong?
Should have played Harry Suter more, but let's be completely honest. It was a side that, again, they won the league. Brilliant. How good was it? How the assist? It's the best thing that's ever happened to football. But did they really grow from there? They let go of Mahrez. They didn't really replace him with someone of his level. Yes, they kept Vardy, but he was also an aging striker. And we look to the players they've brought in, and I go, you didn't really have a lot of ambitions to, okay, you're probably not going to win the league again, but that's what you should be building towards after you've just gone and won the league. And after they did it 7 years ago, you would have thought, okay, they need to be in that top four for the next couple of years to come. They need to be in that top six at worst, but they just slowly dropped off and they kept going. And the same way we speak about Everton, like they didn't win the league, but they're going in the same slippery slope that Leicester are. So I don't think Leicester are a side that does bounce straight back up. I think they do struggle, and they've got the players that, unlike Southampton, where you look at them and you go, maybe there's 2 or 3 players that might get poached and moved around. There's not really a lot of players that are going to stay at Leicester, whereas I look at Maddison, poached, gone, see you later. I look at Harry Suter, someone in the Premier League or someone in the Championship 2 stable is going to take him. He might fit at a Burnley, who knows? But I just look at Leicester and I go, you're going to get torn apart. We've seen that you don't know how to spend your money. We've seen that you don't know how to rebuild a squad. So I think they're more likely to beat a Sunderland than what Leeds are.
Good shout. Harry Suter definitely suits a Burnley, let's be real. Whether that's a Vincent Kompany Burnley, I don't know, but he definitely suits Burnley. So it's a good shout, because I didn't actually think of them. Be interesting to see how his situation plays out. We didn't get minutes under the new manager, but obviously just signing in January as well for the club. So he was expecting to be a Premier League player. He's now back to a Championship player, which he could have been if he stayed at Stoke. So will he be one next season? We don't know. Interesting to see where he goes or if he does stay put and does he get game time. But Morty, West Ham now, they're in a European Cup final. So on that side of things, it's a successful season, but definitely underperformed in the league. Did enough to stay up. They got that magic 40 points, but what do you make of theirs as a whole? If they win the Europa Conference League, is that a successful season?
On paper, it looks like a successful season, but in reality, and the fact that Declan Rice will probably be no longer at West Ham next season, if everything goes ahead, I don't know where West Ham go from there. To be honest, I mean, like they've got not aging players, but they're not young, I think, and yeah, I think we look at that West Ham team. Yeah, you've got some players in there, you've got some things, but that's exactly what we looked at Leicester 2-3 years ago. So it can be a slippery slope. It's not savable, but it can end up going backwards from where they are now.
All right, let's move forward on to Arsenal. Look, they finished their season on a high, massive 5-0 win over Wolves in the game that a lot of tickets were going for apparently $28,000 when they at one stage thought that this would be the title lifting game or the title parade game. Not to be, it's in Manchester, not in London. But Tony, obviously we can say they bottled it, but all in all, second spot when you look at it and where their expectations were, it's a successful season.
Yeah,
or
I mean,
are you going to say that it's a massive bottle? Because I'm happy for that too.
I think it's a bit of both. Like, yes, it's a massive bottle, and okay, we can sit here and say they had to win every single game and they would have just beat City, yada yada yada. But it's the manner that they lost games. Like you go to a Southampton, and obviously we'll talk about it a little bit later. Okay, Liverpool had nothing to play for, and they had a massive 4-4 draw today. But an Arsenal goes to Southampton where you've got the pressure of City coming up behind you, and they kind of just crumbled. So you then go to Liverpool, you're up. Bobby Firmino breaks your heart. And I just don't think they were at the stage where they had the leader in the dressing room to go, it's okay, relax. We lost a game. We lost points. Let's move on to next week. And I think Saka, he's going to come back better for this. All these young players, they're going to come back and they're going to go, we need a leader in the dressing room. And this just proves it. Wolves have been an absolute prick to play against for teams all year. And then Arsenal comes out and smacks them 4-0 because there's now no pressure on them. There's no pressure on them to win this game. They lose this game. Cool. City wins the league by fucking, 7 points if they would have won this morning. Like it had no meaning. So yes, okay, great. You had a great season, but you got knocked out early in the cups. You then got knocked out of the Europa and you said, oh, it's all right because now we can focus on the league. You bottled the league. So was it a bottle? Yes. Was it a successful season? I think anyone with a football brain knows that it's probably one of the most successful seasons probably since the Invincibles, if I'm being completely honest. They fought, they held City towards the end. They didn't win the title, but they showed glimpses of where they can win the title in years to come. Now, Liverpool, Chelsea, I expect them to bounce back. So this could be just a massive fucking out of order where they drop down to 6 next season. But you're back in Champions League football. You can start signing the players. You've got a coach in Arteta who has learned under Pep. We're starting to see can play the same style as Pep. So I think it's an exciting time moving forward if you're an Arsenal fan. But as a United fan, I hope they crumble.
I think it's spot on when you talk about the games they won. It did seem like they won when there was no pressure on them. You saw when they had an 8-point gap, they were fine. They were winning games. But as soon as City were creeping on their neck and, a point or two behind, 4 points even behind, that's when that started to derail them. So you're right. Needs a leader in the dressing room just to say, look, the pressure's on them, not us. But look, it's a successful season regardless. They only finished 6 points off their invincible season, and obviously lost 6 games in the process. So, Morty, what are your thoughts then on this Arsenal team? Do they challenge for the title next year again, or you've got the likes of Liverpool who are going to be stronger? United will get better. Spurs maybe come back. Chelsea should hopefully be up there as well. Is this just a case of all the other teams underperforming, and that's why Arsenal did so well?
Yes and no, because throughout the year, United have performed, Liverpool have performed, Newcastle, they've been performing most of the season. They've performed
Chelsea's
different
not.
parts of No, Chelsea's not in that. But the teams have performed throughout parts of the season. They haven't put it together for the full season, but I don't know. I know Arsenal on paper look like they've bolted it, but it's a hard sell because I know they're being Liverpool, where City have had the game in hand over them the whole season long, pretty much. And yes, I know it's just a game in hand; it's not points on the board. But when it's Manchester City, it's 3 points. It doesn't look right because if they had it, they would have been sitting second most of the season. If the World Cup didn't happen across that thing, they wouldn't have been at the top of the table for nearly as many days as they were. So overall, it's a good season for Arsenal. They'll learn from this. They'll learn from their mistakes. They'll look back where they've gone. We probably should have just had the 3 points here if we just, sat back, not gone for that, 3, 4, 5 goals that they've tried to go for at some points this season. And again, they've had some injuries too. Coming out of the World Cup, Jesus was injured. They lost some of that key part that we look back now and go, okay, they had a draw here. If that was actually 3 points, that's kind of where it wasn't falling apart at the time. But you look back and now and go, but they'll grow from it. They'll learn from it next season. And I mean, they are one of the youngest squads in the league. So only ways up.
All right, now to your boys then. 4-4 draw with Southampton. Look, there wasn't really anything to play for in that final day, but yeah, obviously is not a successful season. You guys, go home empty-handed. Don't get Champions League football. What do you make of it as a Liverpool fan? Do you see signs that next year will be better, or are you worried for Jurgen Klopp moving forward, or how are you feeling?
It's a bit up and down because we had some injuries throughout the season to our attackers. We kind of threw out, we didn't have a bad front three at any point in the season, but we never had a consistent front three. But at the same time, our midfield is pretty much what let us down. So, I mean, it already looks like we're starting to strengthen the midfield. Whether he's the right fit for the team, still don't know. But yeah, look, overall, he fixed it. He turned it around. We could have been much worse off if we were continued on from how we started off this season. So, props to them. I mean, by the looks of it, Trent might be in the midfield next season. He's pretty much played there for the last 3 months, three or 4 months. And, I mean, he's looked a whole lot better. He hasn't been called out defensively once because he's actually got players behind him this time. So, whether that's where we end up having a look to go forward, but I don't know. Overall, it's quite sad. I mean, Bobby's left, cult hero, tear to my eye, but yeah, I don't know. Once our 5 attackers up top, they're all fit, they're all firing. I think we'll be in for a better season as long as we strengthen our midfield.
Tony, now on to Southampton. They're gone after an extended stay in the Premier League, full of a few highs, getting a couple Europa League campaigns in there as well. But yeah, it's evident that they're now down. But you spoke about them earlier and some of the results they picked up along the way this season. It doesn't show that they should have been relegated. I mean, a couple of results against City, they obviously stopped City from the quadruple with Nathan Jones at the helm in the FA Cup. In the Carabao Cup. But obviously, overall, a disappointing season. But again, I'll ask the same question I did with Leeds and Leicester. Can you see them doing a straight bounce back, or what will their fate look like for next year?
I think it goes down to who they keep. If they can keep majority of squad together, it's going to sound quite silly, but I see them like a Norwich and a Fulham where they're going to go back down, they're going to come back up, they're going to go back down. I can see them becoming a yo-yo club, but again, dismal season. I think half of their points came against the top 8 sides. So if you could do that against the teams around you, you're sitting quite comfortable with 5 or 6 rounds to go. But I did have to laugh at Morty saying that Liverpool turned it around and and I thought he was going to say not like Chelsea, but he took the high road and he kept going. But yeah, Liverpool, they definitely struck fear into a United fan, definitely struck fear into Newcastle, thinking they're coming in strong. And I think if there's 5 more games, they probably get top 4. You probably see United or a Newcastle drop out of that top 4 because the momentum they had coming into this end of this season was it's win or die, win or die, win or die mentality. And they put out big results like, okay, 4-4. nothing to play for. But if anything, from all those players that Liverpool have signed from Southampton, letting them experience an 8-goal thriller before they go down, maybe that was their gift back to Southampton fans on their way to the Championship.
It definitely felt like one of those games where it's just almost like a testimonial game, right? Like Bobby's leaving, Ox is leaving, James Milner's leaving, obviously, and Naby Keita. Like, it just felt like a 4-4 is a testimonial scoreline. Southampton's down, Liverpool don't have anything to play for. It just screamed that to me. And Morty, like you said, Bobby got his nice send-off there. Southampton got to celebrate scoring a number of goals. I mean, you should have heard the crowd when I think they went up 3-2, 4-2 at the time. Like, it was electric. It didn't seem like a team that was going into the Championship, but that's where it sits. So we'll move into the final game of the round. 1-1, Crystal Palace, Nottingham Forest. Forest staying up. Again, like a Bournemouth, they've just come up. It's a successful season for them, especially for Forest, given the fact that they haven't been in the Premier League for quite a number of years. European champions a couple times, but haven't been in the Prem for a while. So fair play to Steve Cooper, because he had a tough job signing 100 players and still managed to deal with it. Obviously, his job was on the ropes at times. They stuck with him the whole season, which is, I mean, that's impressive in itself, because they were in the relegation zone for a majority of it. So for a team to not bite the bullet like what Leeds did multiple times, like what Leicester did, Everton did, Southampton did, they stuck with him, and it ended up paying off. So fair play to them. He'll be at the helm next year. Morty, will they build on this, or are you worried for the next year, given they only kind of just scraped?
Well, do they even have half the players that they signed? Didn't they sign a whole load of them on just 12-month
A lot of them alone, yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. Do they go out and do the same thing again? Do they now have safety and start signing some players for the future? I don't know. They're almost going to be a promoted team again next season, because it won't be the same outfit again. So I don't know. It's worked once, might work again. On Palace, another disappointing season for them, because they just seem to float there. They look like they could be pushing top 8, and they don't. They just hover and hover all year, every year. So,
but is there anything wrong with hovering every single year if it means you're like, they weren't ever really facing relegation? I mean, they were maybe at a point with Patrick Vieira, but as soon as Rui Hodgson came in, within maybe 2-3 games, that ship was steadied. So there's always something to aspire to. But are Palace ever going to challenge for European football? Are they just kind of happy getting the paycheck that you get for staying in the Premier League each year? Like, it would be rough supporting them, I can only imagine, given what do you expect out of the team. But Rui Hodgson at the helm, he's 70-something years old. He's probably going to, fingers crossed, not die on the touchline next year, but who knows? They've got a couple of very talented players. Eze, Elise, Zaha's still there as we speak. Where do they go?
They don't seem to go anywhere, but they seem to. Zaha's just seemed to be there or thereabouts on the brink of signing for all these big clubs every season. He hasn't. Fair play to him. I mean, he's stuck at Palace, but does the same thing happen with Elise and Eze? Do they end up going to the big clubs? Because that's where a whole lot of these points came from. They would be down in 15th, 16th, 17th without them. So, yeah, I don't know. They're just props to them. They stay in the Prem. That's a challenge in itself. So I'll give them that.
Tony, what are your thoughts on, I suppose, both situations then, to finish it off?
I think Forest, okay, it depends on what your goal was. If your goal was to purely stay in the Premier League, successful season. But I think the ambition they showed by going out there, and yes, they might have been loans, but throwing out this cash, like they had Dean Henderson and they said, nah, fuck you, you're not good enough. We're going to bring in Navas. Like, they had the ambition to go out there and make all these signings, yet you're sitting 2 positions above relegation. Like, for me, from what they've spent, if you would have said to me, don't worry who came up in the Premier League this year, don't worry who got relegated, here's how much all the teams spent, and here's where they finished, I would have been going, Forest need to be a top 4 side with Chelsea. Like, Chelsea needs to be winning the league. Forest need to be in the top 4 because they bought all these players. But we sit here and we go, they just survived. And I think from a footballing perspective, it's probably the best thing, because if they got relegated, financial issues would have come in like crazy. Like, they would have been absolutely fucked how much funds they had. But on your point about Crystal Palace, they're sitting mid-table. Like, do we really expect the Crystal Palace to go out and play Conference League, to play Europa League, to push for Champions League? They're kind of like the furniture. They're in Everton. They're the furniture in the Premier League where the table's what you're looking at, but there's chairs underneath it that need to hold it up, or there's legs underneath it. And that's what Palace is. They come in, they play games. Zaha has 6 or 7 good games every time he's linked to another club. He ends up staying, he turns to shit. So I think for Palace, you offer me as a Palace, like if I was a Palace fan, top 10 every year, I take it. I don't even ask any questions. I finish 10th and I go, sweet, I'll see you next year, because they do play some exciting games, but for most of the season, they are terrible. So Forest, good luck to you. I reckon you'll be gone sooner than later. Palace, I think you're here to stay for a bit.
Couldn't have said it better for myself, for Palace. I mean, that's brilliant. I suppose, yeah, if you're a season ticket holder, you just go along to Selhurst Park every single week and just enjoy the ride that is the Premier League. And thank God you're not a championship club, I suppose, like you once were. Lads, look, we're gonna end it there. It's been a long one, wrapping up the mental season and the mental final round. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you again at some point. Peace.